Her hands shook as the judge coldly declared, "Guilty." The courtroom fell silent, evidence ignored, justice denied. No one could have predicted that this verdict would soon destroy the judge's career and spark a movement that changed everything. But what happened next will leave you speechless. Let's start from the beginning. The courtroom was suffocatingly silent, a tension so heavy it seemed to press down on everyone present. Emily James, a young black mother and dedicated social worker, stood at the defendant's table, her hands clasped tightly together as though bracing for a blow. Across the room sat Judge George Kenney, his stern face a mask of indifference. Known for his arrogance and deeply rooted biases, particularly against those he deemed unworthy of fairness, Kenney held the fate of an innocent woman in his hands. Emily's defense had been airtight. Witnesses had taken the stand, testifying with clarity and confidence about her innocence. Security footage had been presented, conclusively proving that Emily wasn't at the scene of the alleged crime. Her attorney, Jason Williams, had delivered a passionate and precise argument, dismantling the prosecution's case piece by piece. The truth was evident to everyone in that room, or so it should have been. But Judge Kenney barely glanced at the evidence. His dismissive wave, as though swatting away an inconvenient fly, sent a ripple of disbelief through the gallery. Whispers of confusion filled the room, quickly silenced by a glare from the bailiff. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was sharp and condescending. "This court finds the defendant, Emily James, guilty as charged," he declared, his words slicing through the air like a knife. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Emily's knees nearly buckled under the weight of those words. Her breath caught in her throat, and her vision blurred with unshed tears. She had entered that courtroom clinging to hope, trusting in the fairness of a system she had long believed in. But in that moment, as the verdict echoed in her ears, that trust crumbled into nothingness. Jason, standing beside her, placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his own face pale with anger and disbelief. Around them, the courtroom buzzed with outrage, yet Judge Kenney remained unmoved, his gavel striking down with a finality that silenced even the most vocal objections. For Emily, the world seemed to tilt, her life now spiraling into an uncertain abyss. She couldn't help but wonder, how could the truth be so blatantly ignored? And what kind of justice system allowed this to happen? In the dim, frigid confines of her holding cell, Emily James sat on the hard metal bench, her body hunched forward, consumed by the weight of despair. The faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead only seemed to amplify the silence, broken occasionally by the distant echo of footsteps in the corridor. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a small, worn photograph of her children, a boy and a girl, their bright smiles a painful reminder of the life she'd been ripped away from. She had always taught them to believe in fairness, in the promise that hard work and honesty would prevail. Justice, she had told them, was a cornerstone of their world. But now, she found herself in the cruel paradox of living through its absence. How could she explain this to them? That their mother was locked away for something she didn't do? Jason Williams, her lawyer, sat across from her in the visitor's room hours earlier, the strain on his face betraying his growing frustration. "I'll appeal this," he had promised, his voice resolute, though his eyes told a different story, one of doubt, exhaustion, and rage at a system that had failed so profoundly. Jason had seen cases like this before, but something about Emily's situation struck deeper. Perhaps it was the blatant dismissal of evidence or the look in her eyes, a mix of fear and resolve that refused to fully surrender. He knew the fight ahead would be long, but he also knew he couldn't abandon her now. Outside the cell walls, Emily's story began to take on a life of its own. News outlets ran headlines questioning the integrity of the trial, and social media exploded in outrage. Hashtags like #JusticeFor Emily trended within hours, Strangers posted videos demanding answers, their voices echoing a collective fury. Why was this evidence ignored? One post read. Would this have happened if she weren't black? The questions resonated across the country, sparking a movement fueled by anger and the unshakable belief that the system had wronged an innocent woman. While Emily sat in her cell, consumed by the ache of separation from her children, a wave of support was building, one that would change everything. The breakthrough came when no one expected it. The day after Emily's sentencing, a video began circulating online, footage taken from the courtroom cameras during her trial. The clip, barely a few minutes long, was damning. Judge Kenny's smirking disdain and sarcastic remarks as Jason Williams presented Emily's defense were laid bare for all to see. His bias, so glaring in the footage, couldn't be explained away. It was the spark that ignited a firestorm. The video spread like wildfire across social media, with millions of views within hours. Activists, legal experts, and concerned citizens rallied together, their voices growing louder with each passing moment. Online petitions demanding a review of Emily's case gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures. On the streets, the movement took physical form as thousands marched with signs that read, "Justice for Emily," and "End Judicial Bias." The chants echoed through city squares, courthouse steps, and the very halls of power. Mainstream media picked up the story, and the pressure became impossible to ignore. By evening, the Supreme Court announced an official investigation into Judge Kenny's conduct. The statement was brief, but significant. It was a public acknowledgement that something was deeply wrong. As investigators dug into the judge's history, more shocking revelations surfaced. Case after case revealed patterns of discriminatory rulings and improper behavior. Whispers of bribes, favoritism, and outright contempt for marginalized defendants turned into documented evidence. The man who once wielded his gavel with unchallenged authority now faced a reckoning. Late one night, Jason's phone buzzed, the caller ID showing a number from the state judiciary office. His heart raced as he picked up. The voice on the other end delivered the words he and Emily had been praying for. The conviction had been vacated. The case would be reheard, this time by an impartial judge. Jason sat in stunned silence for a moment before breaking into a wide grin. He could already picture the look of relief on Emily's face when he told her the news. For the first time since this nightmare began, it felt like justice might finally be within reach. The retrial was swift and fair. The new judge reviewed the evidence, listened to the testimony, and declared Emily not guilty. When the verdict was read, Emily broke into tears of relief. As she stepped outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters cheered her on, chanting her name. But the impact of her case didn't end there. Judge Kenny was removed from the bench, and the public outcry sparked a wave of judicial reforms aimed at preventing bias in the legal system. Emily became a national figure, a symbol of resilience and the fight for justice. She began speaking at events, sharing her story, and advocating for others who faced similar injustices. Her words inspired millions. This fight wasn't just for me, it's for everyone who deserves a fair chance, no matter where they come from or what they look like. Emily's journey from victim to advocate reminded the world that even one person's struggle for justice can ignite lasting change.